Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from alexmercedcoder.com, and this is going to be the final video. I know I said the last one's going to be the final, but I realized I forgot to cover how you handle forms in React, and it's one of the more annoying things. So while a lot of the other features like state and props can actually make certain things easier than they otherwise would be, forms is one of those things where it's not necessarily easier, but it's not as bad as it used to be. Okay, so let's talk about this. What I'm going to do is I am going to basically wipe out my app component. Okay. Or actually what I can do is I can just comment out this return and do a separate return. Cool. Okay. And let's just start off with a h1 hello world. Okay, I'm going to save that. Let's run the dev server. So that open this up in terminal. npm run dev. Okay, hello world. Perfect. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this screen to the side. There we go. And then I'm going to move the browser off to the side. I don't need so much browser, so let's do that. And I don't need this. And I really don't need this. Make space. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a form. Okay, so first we'll build the form, and then we'll start kind of fixing the different challenges as we go. So let's make some JSX. This is all going to be one form tag. Form. Okay, in that form tag, we're going to have an input of name, input type equals text. We're going to give it a name property. Always make sure to give it a name property. So the text will be username. And the value we're going to keep blank for now. Okay, we'll just have that field there. And then I'll make another one. Input type equals password, because it's a password field. The name of the field, the name will be password. And the value will also be an empty string. Okay. Cool, 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 cool. And maybe, yeah, I'll just leave it at that. And then we'll add a submit button, which is input type equals submit. And the value of that button we'll say is login. Okay, cool. There's our form. Let me get rid of this extra caret here. Cool. Right now, if I type in this form, okay, right now I can't even type in the form because I set the value to nothing, and it's just going to keep. Basically, what's going to happen is that it gets stuck that way. So we need to actually fix this form so we can edit it. Okay, and we also need to be able to bind the data. So usually what I'll do is I'll give the form its own piece of state. So let's go over here. Const. So I usually will do this as form data. So that's the state. And then there's set form data, which will be the function to change the state. And then it's going to equal react.use state. And it's going to equal, and it's going to be an object with all the properties I expect to have in there. I expect there to be name, username, which will start out as a empty string. And I expect that there's going to be password, which will start out as an empty string. Cool. Okay, so now I need to bind those to this form field. So value is now going to equal form data dot username. Okay, and then just kind of copy the same thing here. Control C, And this one will be form data dot password. Cool. So that means the value of these two fields will always be what these two fields are in the state. Okay, which means they're still not gonna let me type in them. So you see I still cannot type in these fields. So what I need to do is to make it that when I type in the field, it updates the state, because in React you only have one-way data binding. So the form sends the data, the state sends the data to the form, but the form can't send the data back to the state by default. It's not like Angular and Vue, where you have their model directive, which allows you to do two-way data binding. So if I write in the form, it updates the data, and then if I update the data, it updates the form. Two-way binding doesn't exist in React because React is created with a functional programming mindset. Data only moves in one direction. Okay, it doesn't go back and forth. And the reason why that's seen as a pro is because it allows you to find bugs, because you're not worried about what direction the data comes from. You know where the data is going. So it basically limits the number of places where your bugs can be. Okay. So what we got to do is we got to make it that anytime I type in this form, it updates the state. That means every time the form value changes. So that's going to be an onChange event. So we got to create a function to handle that change event. So const handleChange will be the name of the function. Equals, okay, and then this is going to be a function that happens as a part of an event. So like any event function, it gets past the event object. Okay, so in that case, it gets past the event. And what we want to do is set the state. In this case, specifically set form data. Okay, so just like usual, we would just take the state, take the existing state, form data, and spread that in there, because we don't want to lose all the other properties. But we want to change one of the properties, but it could be username, it could be password. How do I know which one I'm changing? Well, there's a cool thing you can do with object keys. I can refer to an object, a property of an object, dynamically. Okay, and that's why I made sure that the name property on the form matches what I called them in the object. Because now I can do event.target, that's the thing that that's the form field's value, .name. Okay, so it's going to borrow the name property from the form, the input tag. Okay, so that's going to be the key, because I put in square brackets, and that's just the way that feature in objects works. So I put the colon there. So it's going to, the key is the property that I'm accessing or changing is depending on the name property of the input that I'm typing into. And then I'm going to change it to a value, which is going to be event.target. So again, that's the input field that I'm typing in at the time. And I'm going to do the value. Okay, so basically if I'm typing in the username input, it's changing the username property in this state to whatever the value inside the I just typed is. Okay, and that will allow me to type in the form. But not yet. Why? Because I still haven't connected this function to this form. Okay, let me open up the DevTools. Okay, so I go to components. Okay, you see here in app, I have form data. See, I have the stuff there, but I will see when I type. Right now, it doesn't change. But so what I want to do is that anytime the form changes, that's called an onChange event. Anytime you type in the form, it's going to run that function. handleChange. Okay, it's going to be the same thing for both inputs. Okay, so that's the beauty of that function, the way it's written. You don't have to create a function for each individual form by writing it dynamically like that, which is pretty much always going to be the same way. You can use the same function for every form field, which makes life a bit easier. Save. Okay, you see my prettier is kind of making it a little bit more orderly, so you can see all the properties on those inputs. Okay, so now I should be able to type in the form box. So let's see here. So take a look at the state here. Okay, so keep an eye on this. I'm going to type in my name and the username in the name box. And see, it updates it. Okay, it's updating every time. With every keystroke, it's updating it. So if I say Alex Merced, and then if I type in the password box, cheese. Okay, see, with every keystroke, it's changing, which triggers the onChange event, which triggers the handleChange function, which then just runs that logic that we just went through. Cool. So now that's the hard part. Okay, so now all the form data is in my state. So now when I want to do anything with it, I just do it from my state. So now I just need to make it where I hit that login button that it does a thing. Okay, so next thing we have to do is do like a handleSubmit function. So handleSubmit equals event, although it doesn't really matter. We're not really using the event object for this, but generally any event handler is always going to take in the event. Okay, all I really want to do here is I want to alert, or actually let's just do a console log of form data. Okay, so I have access to the form data, and then I could pass that into an API call or do whatever you're going to do when you hit the submit button. So in this case, but just to show, I type in the name, like I said, then I hit cheese. Let me open up the console so you can see the console log. I hit login. Oh wait, I haven't connected the button. I made the function, but I didn't connect it to the button. So, and that's actually going to be on the form. So this is going to happen when the form is submitted. So that's an onSubmit event. And we're going to use the function handleSubmit. There we go. So now the form is connected. I type in, like Smith said, I type in cheese and take a look at the console. I hit login. Okay. Now see how that showed for like a second and then immediately disappeared? That's because when you use a form, by default, it's going to refresh the page. So even though it works, I can type some stuff here, and it's going to console log it to the terminal. It'll only show up for a second before the page refreshes. Okay, in order to fix that, I need the event object. So this is why we do need the event in handleSubmit. I need to do event.preventDefault. Okay. And what this function does, it just prevents the form from enacting its default behavior of refreshing the page. So now if I type in, as I said, cheese, I hit login, and now we see the console log, but the page doesn't refresh. Okay, so just to kind of recap, we create a form, which would just be like you'd create a form, but you have to make sure that there's a name property on each one. And then you're going to connect the value property on each form input to a property in your state, whether that's in just one big giant state object or if it's in a separate piece of state like I did it here. Okay, you're going to put it in, connect it to that. Then you're going to create a handleChange function, so that way anytime you change that input, it updates the state. So that way when you submit, that you just grab the data from state. You don't have to even worry about the form. You're not grabbing the data from the form. You're grabbing it from your state, because every time you've been editing your form, it's been updating your state. Okay? And again, having the Chrome DevTools always makes it easy to make sure that things are just doing what you think they're supposed to be doing. So we just click here, and you can see the app component, and we can see what values it has. So I can see the state, this particular state, has the output cheese. So see here's the state from the reducer from the previous video. It's all there. Okay, so that's how you handle forms in React. Okay, there are libraries that are supposed to help make that simpler, like Formik. It's Formik. I don't feel like it's that much more complicated that it requires a whole library to handle, but some people like the Formik library. There's other form libraries in React. But that's how you do it. It's not too bad. It was a little bit trickier back when it was class components, because with class components, you had this issue with the this keyword. So you'd always have to bind your functions to make sure that when you clicked on the button and you used this keyword, it wasn't it knew it was referring to the component, not to the button you clicked. But with function components, that's not even an issue. So, yay! But I think at this point in this video series, 5 videos, You got all the React basics and then some. Now it's just a matter of practice. Go build some things. Go try. The best thing to do is try to build a to-do list. Okay, without a tutorial, without, just think through like, what would my state be? So like, I'd have a piece of state that has a to-do list. How am I going to get data to the to-do list? How am I going to pull data from the to-do list? How am I going to render it to the screen? And just build it and figure it out. That's always a good starter project when learning any of these front-end frameworks, because the logic's always the same. There's just some array of to-dos. I'm going to show them on the screen, and then when a new to-do is submitted, I'm adding it to that array. So, it's a simple logic, but it forces you to actually use most of the features of any of these frameworks in completing it. So try that out. My name is Alex Merced from alexmercedcoder.com. Make sure you join the Slack and Discord community over there at devnursery.com and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Have a great day and enjoy.